The Pussycat Dolls should have been unstoppable. By the end of their first album cycle, they had gone from a Los Angeles burlesque act to one of the biggest girl groups in the world. Until it all went crashing down again. If you thought part 1 was dramatic, you have no idea what's coming. In this video, we will break down the Pussycat Dolls' second album track by track and look at how the recession pop era transformed their sound. We will revisit their music videos and see how the burlesque visual identity that made them so distinctive slowly eroded in real time. We will break down their live performances and the infamous tour during which tensions inside the group became increasingly difficult to hide, leading to their split. In the second half of this video, we will explore how the Dolls scattered into wildly different solo careers and find out what actually happened when Nicole Scherzinger finally got the solo career she had been promised. We will also catch up with Melody, Carmit, Jessica, Ashley, and Kimberly once the group disappeared.
You're MAGA. Yeah, I am.
And see just how different their lives unfolded after PCD. And yes, because so many of you demanded it after part 1, I finally listened to Melody's Lioness Eyes in full. I even have a little surprise for you. Finally, we will explore how Rob and Antin tried to replace the entire lineup with a new generation of dolls announced during the Super Bowl. We will break down how the original members tried to reunite in later years and how the comeback collapsed, the lawsuits that followed, and why another reunion emerged with more dolls left behind. And please brace yourselves because I am much more critical of the Pussycat Dolls in part 2, and I won't mince my words, so if you're easily offended or if you think the Pussycat Dolls are untouchable, you might self-combust watching this video. This is the complicated legacy of the Pussycat Dolls, part 2. If you didn't watch part 1, it's totally fine. You can watch this series in any order you'd like. Shout out to my subscribers out there who have been relentlessly asking for part 2 ever since the release of part 1. You know who you are and I appreciate that energy. As always, if at any point in this video you want to share your knowledge, add context, or provide missing details, please do not hesitate. I'm a team of one, so I love when viewers with dense knowledge participate in the comment section. Before we dive into the Doll Domination album, we must highlight a few important things that happened between the events of part 1 and the release of the new album. First off, in 2007, they attempted to launch Nicole Scherzinger as a solo artist with an album titled Her Name is Nicole. This came after PCD, but before Doll Domination. You might have heard the song Whatever You Like. It was part of that project. But due to poor single performance, the label tabled the album and the focus shifted back to the making of the Doll Domination album. The other important event between the Pussycat Dolls' first and second album is the departure of Carmit, the OG doll. She left the group prior to the release of Doll Domination. At the time, the Pussycat Dolls' PR machine worked hard to portray her departure as amicable. The storyline was that Carmit left on friendly terms to pursue solo projects. But I'm not sure that her departure from the Pussycat Dolls was in fact amicable. Don't worry, we will explore in more detail everyone's solo career in this video, but for the time being, it's important to know that she in fact had a solo project in the works at the time of her departure. Carmit was developing and producing a multi-genre theatrical show called The Zodiac Show, a concept she had been developing since 2001.
I'm super excited for my solo project, focused on it now. Last year I left the group to do the Zodiac Show and that was a total success.
Apparently, Carmit received an ultimatum from Interscope, forcing her to choose between the Pussycat Dolls and her team of artists and partners on the Zodiac Show. But internal conflicts within the band are also said to have played a role in her departure. Carmit leaving the group ahead of Doll Domination was also a sign that Rob and Antin and Interscope did not view the lineup of the Pussycat Dolls as sacred. In my view, this idea was first conveyed to the general public with the search for the next doll. The show's premise was based on the notion that the lineup could be expanded, that adding a member after they had already released an album was no big deal. Similarly, the fact that they could not find common ground with Carmit and just move forward without her showed that the lineup could also be shrunk that removing a member for the second album was no big deal. Today, we know that Interscope and Robin Antin never viewed the Pussycat Dolls lineup as sacred. Even the idea that Nicole was essential to the group will be challenged in later years, as we will see. Okay, now that we've established that, let's take a look at the Dolls' second album. Chapter 8, Doll Domination. Carmeet arguably dodged a bullet by leaving prior to the release of this album because, artistically speaking, the Pussycat Dolls peaked in the PCD era. Doll Domination is a much weaker music project in virtually all aspects. As far as the music goes, Doll Domination rejected elements that made the PCD album sound unique, namely by favoring electronic synth sounds over analog arrangements. On the first record, we get string sections, flute solos, a lot of piano, harmonica, xylophone, and more. For the most part, all of that is gone on the second album. Any mention of the PCD orchestra is also gone from the album's credits. To best understand why Doll Domination sounds the way it does, it's important to talk about the context in which the album was produced and released. During that era, the Pussycat Dolls were not the only artists shying away from expensive analog sounds. The album was released in 2008 at the beginning of what will later be called the recession pop era, widely understood to be a music production movement most present between 2008 and 2012. Recession pop coincides with the Great Recession, but also with immense changes in the music industry, leading to lower budgets for album productions. Session musicians get cut more frequently during this era because they are expensive. That's why in the contemporary streaming era, you are more likely to hear a string ensemble being featured on the album of a well-established artist because the label knows they'll recoup their investment. Newer artists might not be granted the necessary budget to breathe some analog life into their production. If you watched my review of Pedal by Ariana Grande, you know this is one of my criticisms of that album's production. I really like analog sounds mixed in with predominantly synth productions. But back in 2008, the industry was in crisis, not only because of the recession, but also because revenue streams were drying up. This is the MP3 era. People were no longer buying CDs like in the early 2000s, and paying a monthly subscription for streaming was not a thing yet. Instead, audiences were illegally downloading MP3 files and nobody was making money like they used to. The same issue was raised in part 1 of my deep dive about Britney Spears. In her case, the label opted to release Blackout ahead of its original release date because of extensive leaks on platforms like LimeWire. The rise of illegal downloads will later open the door to even more predatory record deals. In part 1, we talked about the so-called 360-degree deals. Well, those became more frequent during the recession pop era. Speaking of the Pussycat Dolls record deal, in somewhat recent interviews, Kimberly claimed that the Dolls signed the first 360-degree deal in the industry.
The Pussycat Dolls were the very first 360 deal ever done in the music industry.
You go.
But that's not quite right. Although they were among the first to sign such a deal, it's Robbie Williams, also known as a jumped-up karaoke singer according to Louis Walsh, who is widely known to have signed the first ever 360 deal. In 2002, he signed a £80 million 6-album deal with EMI. As part of that deal, he gave them a cut of his touring, publishing, and merch revenues. Regardless, it is true that prior to the recession pop era, 360-degree deals were less common, and the Pussycat Dolls were among the first. My Chemical Romance and Paramore also signed those deals in the early 2000s. When Doll Domination was released, the industry was also starting to move away from an album-focused model, shifting instead to a single-driven one. In 2008, we were in the early phase of this important shift. So record labels were still expected to produce long albums with a lot of songs all around the 3-minute mark to get radio plays, despite revenues drying up. This meant reducing production costs, but releasing just as many songs. I am inclined to believe that the industry shifted back to an album-driven model since streaming has become a more stable consumer preference, but nowadays albums are usually shorter and songs too. I'm happy to talk about that kind of music industry technicality in another video. I worked in the industry in my early career, so let me know if you'd like that. All that to say, budgets in 2008 were not the same for album production when compared to 2005, and you can hear it. Doll Domination sounds cheap and muddy. It's hard to tell if the issue is primarily one of mixing or mastering, but in any case, it sounds rough. Doll Domination also struggled seizing the era in which it came out. At that point, the Dolls would go against big hitters like Britney Spears' Circus, which is the album I think of when I think of recession pop. And just a few months prior, Britney released Blackout. Doll Domination pales in comparison to contemporary albums of its era, especially with regards to its production. Before we take a look at the album track by track, I wanted to thank you for being here and interacting with my content. I love reading your encouraging comments as much as your critical views. As usual, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It's not just a vanity metric, by the way. Likes help grow the reach of the video in the algorithm so more people can join our growing community. Also, if you're watching this video on the YouTube app early after it was released, you can hype it up to 3 times. This is a new-ish feature on YouTube to help small content creators like me break through. It helps beyond belief. But in any case, I'm just thankful you chose this video among the million other options out there. Now, let's proceed with our track-by-track breakdown of Doll Domination, and brace yourselves, I'm very critical of this album. The album opens with When I Grow Up, which sounds more like a demo than a finished song for the most part. There is a fucking wooden fish being played throughout the track, and it always drove me crazy. As the song progresses, it starts dragging so slightly behind the beat. Thank God we get a break in the bridge because that scratchy sound is there the whole song otherwise. This is not exactly the caliber of session instruments one could expect from the Pussycat Dolls following PCD. When I Grow Up is not a bad song, but its production does not hold up as well as I'd like. How does it sound so thin and muddy at the same time? Thematically, When I Grow Up is quite superficial, arguably more superficial than most songs on PCD, and that's a low bar. It treats fame as the ultimate currency, which was not out of sync with this era of pop culture, to be fair. Gaga's debut album, The Fame, was released the same year and touches heavily on celebrity as a main driver, but for the Dolls, it was a departure from the woman empowerment ideals of the first album, as flawed as they were. Fame is also not a theme sustained throughout the album, unlike Gaga. The second song on the album is Bottle Pop, which is one of my least favorite singles released from the Dolls. Bottle Pop sounds like it was mixed on a Fisher-Price deck. Like, please, why is the production so muddy? There's no room for vocals to breathe. It also has no business being the second song on the album. I will never like this song, I'm sorry. In part 1, we talked about how the Pussycat Dolls approached female empowerment through the male gaze, leading to a form of dichotomy between lyrics and the visuals for songs like I Don't Need a Man. On Doll Domination, it's as though the Dolls kept the male gaze angle, but not so much the female empowerment aspect. It would be hard to defend Bottle Pop as a female empowerment anthem. It's really just a song filled with weak innuendos. Not even Snoop Dogg manages to save that song, let alone recreate the magic of their collaboration for the Buttons music video. Similarly, adding Missy Elliott to What You Think About That did not save the third song. Although it was definitely a better song than Bottle Pop, it still pales in comparison to any single off of PCD. What You Think About That makes use of Nicole's vocal abilities more successfully, but it's still a letdown sonically and lyrically. I'm sure some people will attempt to defend this song, but as far as female empowerment goes, it shows how different the focus has changed lyrically from the first album. On PCD, the Dolls' rapport to men is mostly defined by their confidence in their own sex appeal. When they sing Don't You Wish Your Girlfriend Was Hot As Me, they engage with men with regards to their own hotness. It's not the same as somebody's gonna cry tonight, but it won't be my tears. What do you think about that? Here they engage with men in more adversarial terms, as though they cared about what men think. In a way, it goes against the I don't need a man mantra they preached on the previous album. Do you know what I'm saying? Let me know in the comments below. The next song is I Hate This Part. I briefly talked about my dislike for this song when I ranked all the Pussycat Dolls music videos, and I mean it. I hate the top line with a passion. Although I dislike this song as far as my personal taste goes, I can still objectively say it's not a bad song. I will gladly admit it was extremely well received at the time. It also benefits from a better production when compared to other songs, and I totally understand why people like this song. Another reason I never liked this song is because it doesn't sound like a Pussycat Dolls song to me. Why does it sound like a Pink song?
I love Pink.
The loss of the unique Pussycat Dolls style carefully crafted on the first album is the biggest letdown with Doll Domination. In an ideal world, the follow-up to PCD would have built on the unique sounds of the first album and pushed it forward, not abandon it fully. Think of how Gaga built on the sounds of the Fame with the Fame Monster. PCD took the burlesque roots of the Pussycat Dolls and mixed it with early Y2K music conventions. Doll Domination should have done the same, meaning they should have taken the burlesque roots of the Dolls and made it contemporary to 2008, but instead we're left with an album that fails to honor the burlesque roots of the Pussycat Dolls, so Robin Antin's original vision is no longer an asset. Other songs that are somewhat listenable on this album include Taking Over the World, Who's Gonna Love Me, Magic, and Love the Way You Love Me. But they're also equally forgettable. Of the non-single songs, I think Whatchamacallit stands out. I like Nicole's delivery on this. I'm surprised it was not bumped up closer to the beginning of the album in the pacing, but it's still not a heavy hitter. Ironically, the best song coming out of this era is not even on the album, at least not the good version. The album version of Hush Hush is a boring ballad, but for the music video, the Dolls used a disco-inspired remix titled Hush 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 Hush. This song samples and covers Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive. It's so much fun. It's a shame it was not on the original album. Although Hush 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 has a disco flair and sounds a little thin in the chorus, we recognize some of the Pussycat Dolls sound we expected from the first album, including piano and string parts. There is even a harp in the arrangement, and Nicole's vocals are amazing, although they could have put a bit of reverb on her track. Why are their vocals so dry? Overall, I find the production value of Doll Domination depressingly cheap following PCD, but it gets worse on the deluxe version. On that version of the album, interestingly, the girls all get a solo song, including Nicole, as if she didn't get solo songs already. They are all labeled as introducing the girl who sings the lead, except for Nicole, who needs no introduction. That's so shady. I'm sorry, but those tracks are atrociously bad. The audacity to put these tracks on a deluxe album and charge more for them is grounds for a consumer's protection lawsuit. If you thought Nicole was being greedy for singing lead vocals, please do me a favor, pause this video and go listen to those tracks. I know I'll get hate for this, but it has to be said, even Melody's track is bad. The pitch corrector on her vocals is frying my brain. None of these girls had any business singing lead vocals. I'm sorry, I know PCD fans hate when I say that, especially regarding Melody, but those tracks prove my point. Go ahead, listen to those tracks and tell me I'm wrong in the comments below. Be for real. To my surprise, I think the best track is Ashley's. Not to say that it's a banger, but I like her tone on this. It's nothing amazing, of course, but they work within her range, and I like the vocal arrangements on the chorus. She's like Victoria Beckham's level of singing, and that might be generous. So needless to say, she could not deliver any of Nicole's vocals, but I find her suitable to support the group with back vocals. Funny enough, the credits for those so-called introducing tracks are all the same, regardless of who sings the lead. They all credit Nicole and Melody for singing the main vocals, and the other girls for singing the back vocals. So I can only assume that their recording contract included an umbrella clause for the credits of this whole album, or something of that nature. But still, it's very strange to see those credits on solo tracks. I wonder if the girls make any more money on their solo tracks versus the other songs on the album. Obviously, they should make more money if they sing the lead, but do they? Based on the credits sheet, I have my doubts. Also, when you compare these solo tracks to Nicole's solo track at the end, it's clear they favored Nicole. This should not come as a surprise, but her solo track was written by none other than legendary writer Diane Warren. Regardless of who wrote the song, it's still a boring send-off for a less than interesting follow-up to PCD. This album would have benefited from reducing the number of songs from 20 to 10 in order to focus on tighter production. It feels like resources were stretched thin on this record for the reason we touched on earlier. If I were to edit this album, I would remove Happily Never After, Halo, In Person, Elevator, as well as the 5 solo tracks on the deluxe version. I would redirect production costs for these 10 songs into the 10 remaining songs. That way, we would have a better produced 10-track album instead of a mostly poorly produced 20-track album. On my new 10-track record, I would replace the album version of Hush Hush with the disco remix, and I would bump it up closer to the top. So the album would open with When I Grow Up and then Hush 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 Hush, so we know this album is for dancing. Like, I see the potential with Doll Domination, but they were stretched way too thin and failed to build on the strengths of the previous album, and I have the same feelings for the music videos accompanying this album. Chapter 9. The Visuals. I talked extensively about the Pussycat Dolls music video catalog in this separate unscripted video, so I'll keep my remarks on the shorter side in the current video because, let's be real, it's long enough as it is. Much like the album, the videos for the Doll Domination era are not as iconic as those of the first era, and although there are some notable exceptions, most of these videos look low budget. The first video to come out was When I Grow Up, and it's a solid entry in the Dolls video catalog. It also serves as a visual rebrand for the Dolls, who now embrace a more urban look. I'm not using the term urban out of nowhere, by the way. Robin Antin talked a lot about her penchant for the so-called urban look in those years. For example, she explicitly pitched Girlicious as an urban version of the Dolls the year prior to the release of this video. At the same time, we are also losing some of the more iconic aesthetics built in the first era, notably the burlesque-inspired style that came to define the Pussycat Dolls. Interestingly, they will incorporate burlesque inspiration into their styling when they go on tour with this album, so it's interesting to see them mostly abandoning that aspect only for their music videos. The video for When I Grow Up is probably best remembered for its dancing sequence on cars and the iconic dance break toward the end. And based on the YouTube replay graph, you can tell people are disproportionately rewatching this part. But please, can someone tell me why anyone would film this in overhead lighting? The first half of the video looks as though it was filmed at noon on Sunset Boulevard. Like, why are we filming in overhead lighting? It is so ugly. Nobody looks good in harsh overhead lighting. Regardless, When I Grow Up was the perfect first single to release, and the video with its dance break makes it abundantly clear. Unfortunately, for a group that relies so heavily on the aesthetics of dancing, the Pussycat Dolls were not putting out dance bangers as much as you'd expect in this era, even though recession pop is known for its reliance on so-called dance breaks. For example, the next video to come after When I Grow Up fails to seize the moment. What you think about that is one of their most forgettable videos, if not the most forgettable. I'm bored, but I bashed this video enough in my ranking video, so I'll move on for the time being. I Hate This Part came next, which improved on the formula when compared to What You Think About That, but it's definitely not as strong of an entry when compared to the ballad on their first album, Stick With You. The styling in this video is completely dissociated from anything we came to expect from the Pussycat Dolls. Much like the song itself, it does not look like a Pussycat Dolls music video. We are really starting to witness the complete erosion of Robin's initial vision that carried the group in their first era. At this point, we don't really know what the visual DNA of the Dolls is meant to be. It's like there is no through line anymore. In my opinion, it's because they stopped using the burlesque aesthetics as the basis of their modern visual identity, much like they rejected the burlesque inspiration in their music. The next video, Bottle Pop, is not much better and shows how they are all over the place as far as visual coherence goes. It seems like this video was an attempt to find the Dolls' aesthetics again, but it's not really successful. The makeup is crazy, the video is boring, the magic is lost. And honestly, I keep mixing the video for What You Think About That and Bottle Pop in my head because they are so forgettable. And I can guarantee that video did not cost a lot to make. Like, if you take this video and compare it to Doncha, both videos were filmed on location instead of a soundstage, but look at the number of extras in the Doncha video. This scene is expensive to shoot. Now look at Bottle Pop. Nothing. Cheap, cheap, cheap production for a cheap song. The last two videos left are still technically part of the Doll Domination cycle, but the songs are not featured on the regular version of the album, so it feels like an afterthought. First came J-Ho, which is a strange release in the Dolls' discography. Because it isn't explicitly on the album, I won't discuss it more in this video, but know that I talk about it in my ranking video. Finally, the last video of this era was Hush 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 Hush. I always found this video interesting visually, although it isn't Pussycat Dolls coded either, except maybe for Nicole's hooded dress, which reads very Pussycat Dolls to me. In this video, the Pussycat Dolls perform in a literal dollhouse. This is fun and makes for interesting visuals. I'm surprised they did not exploit this idea until their last video before they officially split. In fact, Hush 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 feels like their last video. We see Nicole alone in a lot more scenes than usual, and the parts they shot together are not as exciting as they used to be. But overall, it's a fun entry in an otherwise mostly boring and confusing era. The Doll Domination music video era opened with a banger and closed with a banger. Everything in between was disappointing in my opinion, but let me know what you think. Do you think this era lives up to the PCD era? I'm curious to know what your thoughts and feelings are. Chapter 10. The Dolls Go Live. The Pussycat Dolls performed live and went on tour with their second album. Let's see how that went, and let me tell you, it was as dramatic as the first time around. As with the last album, the Pussycat Dolls did a number of promotional performances on TV to support Doll Domination. They performed When I Grow Up at the MTV Video Music Awards, at the American Music Awards, on So You Think You Can Dance, and on Jimmy Kimmel Live. During some of these appearances, they also performed I Hate This Part, notably at the American Music Awards. They performed I Hate This Part on the Ellen DeGeneres Show and on The Hills finale live final event. And on the Today Show, they put on an early morning outdoor concert. They also promoted the album with live performances abroad, notably on Sunrise in Australia, on Loose Women in the UK, and on Star Academy in France. Early in 2009, the Pussycat Dolls headlined their own tour in Europe. Lady Gaga and Ne-Yo opened for them. The Dolls toured 8 countries in Europe for a total of 23 shows in the UK, Ireland, Germany, the Netherlands, France, Belgium, Slovakia, and Serbia. But most of the shows were in the UK. You'll see later in this video how important the UK is to most of the girls' careers during the Pussycat Dolls era and after. In part 1 of this video, we saw how the Dolls did not headline their own tour in North America, and instead opted to open for more established artists on their stadium tours. They did the same thing during the Doll Domination era by opening for Britney Spears' Circus Tour. By the way, we will cover Britney Spears' circus era, including the start of her conservatorship years in part 2 of my ongoing Britney Spears series, so make sure to subscribe for that. Part 1 is already out. It's about Blackout and her breakdown in 2007, so check that one out after you're done with this video. It's one of my favorite uploads on the channel. The Pussycat Dolls served as the main opening act of the circus starring Britney Spears. They were on the road for 2 months between March to May 2009 for 27 dates across Canada and the US. While the tour was a massive platform to promote Doll Domination, many observers viewed this tour as a breaking point for the group. Somehow, the most intense drama with the Dolls seems to happen whenever they're on tour. The Doll Domination era was no different, and some of the most famous incidents happened during the circus tour. Most specifically, on April 24th, during their performance in Glendale, Arizona, a city neighboring Phoenix. Leading up to this show, there was a major change to the promotional billing for the tour. The opening act was suddenly called The Pussycat Dolls featuring Nicole Scherzinger. This is very reminiscent of the J-Ho drama. Obviously, the Dolls were pissed at this, and it all came crashing down in Arizona. Melody, who's from Phoenix, used the opportunity to address the crowd and call out the unfair situation. While Melody spoke, Nicole looked uncomfortable, and immediately after, she started yelling, "I'm Nicole." It's all so strange. After the circus tour concluded in the spring of 2009, the dolls resumed headlining their own gigs outside the US, namely in Oceania and Asia. They also hit the European festival circuit that summer. The Pussycat Dolls played 28 shows across 13 countries after the circus tour. This included 8 shows in Australia and 1 in New Zealand. They also performed in Singapore, South Korea, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Taiwan. And at the end of the summer, they returned to Europe to hit the outdoor festival circuit. Most of these shows were in the United Kingdom, but they also performed at festivals in Ireland, Germany, France, Belgium, and Monaco. They also did 1 show at a festival in Lebanon, which is not in Europe. There's one last thing I'd like to discuss before we conclude this chapter. If you remember, in part 1, we discussed how Nicole benefited from special treatment on tour, something that was included in her contract. This included her own tour bus, for instance, whereas the other girls would have to share a second bus. Well, Nicole's contractual special treatment continued and even intensified during the 2009 Doll Domination legs. She maintained her own private tour bus and separate high-end hotel suites, completely isolated from the rest of the girls who were forced to share the second bus. This physical separation, combined with Interscope Records rebranding mid-tour, fueled massive backstage anger. By the time the tour wrapped up that July, the group was fractured. There were also allegations of poor care for the girls, including Jessica feeling abandoned after breaking a rib.
So I fractured my 11th rib and they had to send me home. But the problem with sending me home was I was on tour and I had no place in LA or no car, so I had nowhere to go. So I had a broken rib, so I was virtually homeless. When I broke my rib, it really made me take a closer look at what I wanted in my life, and it wasn't to be a part of the Pussycat Dolls anymore. It was to step out on my own and not be in the shadow of Nicole anymore.
Every single member except Nicole quit the group within months. Before we continue, I want to explain how I structured the next few chapters of this video to make it as easy to follow as possible. The next 3 chapters will cover the time between the dolls' breakup and their first reunion attempt, so roughly the 2010 decade. In chapter 11, we will break down the trajectory of Nicole's career after the dolls. I decided to dedicate a whole chapter to Nicole because her career is much more prolific and complex to analyze. It includes solo albums, a British exile, and more. It is also interesting to compare her success as a solo act to her success as the lead singer of the Pussycat Dolls because expectations were so high, so it makes sense to start with her. Chapter 12 will be dedicated to the other girls' solo careers. It will be an equally long chapter because of how much has been going on in the girls' lives since the original breakup of the Pussycat Dolls. We'll take a look at some of their solo projects, including Lioness Eyes, since many of you have been begging me to listen to it. I decided to bundle all the other girls into one chapter because there were a lot of similarities as far as their experiences leaving the dolls. Those experiences are in sharp contrast to Nicole's career, so it's best to start with Nicole and then do the rest of the dolls. Chapter 13 might be my favorite of the entire video, even if it's one of the shortest. It will be dedicated to the Pussycat Dolls brand after the split of the group. This chapter will mostly be from Robin Antin's perspective. In the 2010s, she attempted to breathe new life into the Pussycat Dolls brand, in part by launching a so-called new generation of dolls, and it was controversial. So chapters 11, 12, and 13 will all cover from 3 different angles the events leading up to the recent reunion saga. The reunions will be covered in chapter 15. Everything else will be covered at the end of the video, including Nicole's Tony win and many controversies surrounding the dolls. I will try to keep the information as concise as possible and present it in a way that captures a broader story because this video is long enough as it is. I know I will get comments saying I did not cover this or did not talk about that. I'm sorry, I'm just not the BBC and I don't have unlimited resources, so please, if you wish to add complimentary information, do so in the comment section. Alright, let's get this next chapter rolling. Chapter 11. Nicole goes solo. Like most girl bands, and boy bands for that matter, the Pussycat Dolls were never meant to last. But here, the context was different. When One Direction split up, we all wondered who would make it as a solo artist and who wouldn't. I used to work for One Direction, by the way, but that's a story for another video, so let me know in the comments below if you'd be interested knowing more. When the boys split, people in the office were placing their bets. Would Liam be bigger than Zayn? What about Harry or maybe Niall? To be honest though, nobody banked on Louis. Sorry. All of that to say, until Harry emerged as the most successful solo member, there was no way to tell for sure who would be the Beyoncé of the group. With that being said, all members of One Direction built successful solo careers outside the band. Props to them, cause it's quite unusual actually. But the situation was different with the Pussycat Dolls. We all knew that Nicole was the Beyoncé of the group. We all knew she would eventually go solo because the group albums were already solo albums with the exception of some ad-libs and some back vocals. Not to mention, she already released solo tracks between PCD and Doll Domination. But some questions remained. First off, how successful could Nicole be as a solo artist? It was a legitimate question given how the record label initially bundled her career with Robin Antin's vision for marketing purposes, let's be real, and also the fact that her name is Nicole was tabled by the label. We will go over her career as a solo singer, but first, I want to tell you a personal story. I lived in London, UK in the mid-2010s until Brexit. That's when I worked for One Direction in their last era before they split up. To my surprise, when I moved to London, Nicole Scherzinger was thriving. This came as a surprise to me because at that point, I viewed Nicole as a failed solo pop star following mid to mildly successful solo releases. When I tell you Nicole was everywhere in the UK, I mean everywhere on TV. She was in yogurt commercial, morning TV and chat shows, and most importantly, she was a judge on the X Factor as a replacement for Cheryl. And before I hear American viewers say that it is a downgrade going from an American pop star to a judge on a British reality TV show, let me make my case. It's very important to understand how central the telly is in British culture. I kid you not, every Thursday, Friday and Sunday nights, my flatmates and I would gather in our common room to watch telly and talk over it, like we were on Gogglebox or something. If I remember correctly, Thursday nights were for Channel 4 documentaries because they were always over the top crazy. I will never forget watching My Life as a Living Doll, and even better, My Granny the Escort, top tier British TV experiences by the way. My friend Hannah and I still text about these documentaries to this day. Fridays and Sundays would be for big television events. Those would often be carried live on ITV. Think the X Factor live show for instance. The Brits love live television because anything can happen. And when I say we would not miss a telly night, I mean it. We would stay in, watch telly, trash talk, and drink pear cider from Lidl all night rather than go out on the town. The telly is what made Girls Aloud and One Direction possible, and the telly is what brought down Prince Andrew and Joe from S Club 7. The telly can make or break you. In Nicole's case, it was a blessing, and as we'll see in the next chapter, it was a blessing for many of the other dolls too. Nicole's run as a judge on the X Factor did not just place her at the heart of British culture, it also completely transformed the way audiences viewed her. Think of when Nicole sang I Will Always Love You at the judging panel to defend her credentials as a judge. It was great TV because Nicole was viewed as nothing more than the sexy ex-Pussycat doll. I view Nicole's British exile not only as a rebranding exercise, but also as a full repositioning for the trajectory of her career. The same way British film actors might decide to take a theater role to perfect their craft. Think of Daniel Radcliffe after Harry Potter, or how Ian McKellen and Maggie Smith never stopped doing theater. Movie will make you rich, TV will make you popular, theater will make you good. Similarly, the X Factor allowed Nicole to prove she was more than the sexy pop singer. She was an actual vocalist. And earning the respect of the UK public is not easy, let me tell you. Their music culture is rich, and if you can't do it live, you might as well not do it at all. Nicole sang some of the hardest songs live, and quickly she was everywhere. I truly believe that Nicole would not have been able to claim a Tony if it was not for her British exile. I will die on this hill. The UK allowed her to showcase the depth of her talent in a way that American culture could not. I'm sure many of you saw the behind-the-scenes clips of her basically putting One Direction together. Nicole was good TV too. She volleyed with the judges on the panel, which is a skill highly valued by British audiences, and she had big shoes to fill. Think what you want of Cheryl as far as her vocal abilities go, but Cheryl was good TV on the X Factor. It should not come as a surprise. After all, her entire career is a product of television. Cheryl got her big break on Pop Stars The Rivals in 2002. This mirrors Nicole's big break on Pop Stars USA in 2001. With Cheryl on the panel, audiences would tune in to see what she would wear on the live shows, but most importantly, they'd tune in to see her on-screen rivalry with Simon Cowell. Their dynamic will go down in British TV history. I'm not kidding when I say that Nicole had big shoes to fill. Although she was not as confrontational as Cheryl and did not possess the same likable northern affection, she brought something valuable to the show and the panel, in addition to gaining respect for her vocal abilities. Clips of Nicole's performances on The X Factor remain among the most watched of that era for the show. With that being said, The X Factor was able to do something for Cheryl that it was not able to do for Nicole: sell her solo music. The success of Cheryl's first album, and arguably the second one too, cannot be dissociated from her time on The X Factor. Her performance of Fight for This Love on the show massively aided her rise as a solo artist after the huge success of Girls Aloud. Unfortunately for Nicole, no amount of British telly would revive her solo career as a pop star. And I say revive because by the time Nicole crossed the pond, she had already attempted to launch a solo career to varying degrees of success. Because the Pussycat Dolls had been so successful, expectations were high for Nicole's career, and anything lesser than the Pussycat Dolls would inevitably be viewed as a flop. Now, with that being said, it is true that her solo career as a pop star did not achieve the same cultural impact. Her pop music legacy will always be that of the Pussycat Dolls, but it does not mean she flopped as a solo artist. Like, just because American Life sold less than music does not make it a flop. It still sold 5 million copies. Similarly, just because Nicole did not sell as much as the Pussycat Dolls doesn't mean it was an objective flop. Her music still charted. I think there are two main reasons why many view Nicole's solo career as a failure. First off, like we discussed earlier, between PCD and Doll Domination, they attempted to launch her solo career with her name as Nicole, but the project was shelved because of poor single performances. So she shifted to Doll Domination instead. I think this left an early impression on audiences as to Nicole's capabilities as a solo act. Secondly, after the Dolls broke up, Nicole pivoted to a more Euro-pop sound, mostly driven by Red One style, which was very trendy at the time, but it didn't break through on the biggest market for music. Killer Love was released in 2011, and it did not resonate as much in the US. The UK and Europe were more open to that sound, and dare I say, French Canada was also down with this as far as I remember, but because it did not work as much in the US market, I think that amplified the idea that she was a failed pop star. If you'd allow me, I'd like to touch on this point quickly. The American market is the #1 market for music after China. In other words, it's the #1 Western market for music. There's no doubt if you make it big in the US, you're set for life. But this focus on the United States as this major market for music often skews our perception of artists, mostly in the English language. The United States is not the only market for music. Just because you're not breaking through the US market does not mean you're a flop. For instance, there are many successful UK acts that never made it in the US. Is Take That a flop? Is Girls Aloud a flop? Of course not. Same goes for Canada, same goes for Australia, I'm sure. Same goes with other markets that are not English focused. Think of France, it's a huge market for music. The top-selling album of all time in France is Deux by Céline Dion. It sold more copies than Thriller. In fact, Deux is the top-selling French album of all time. It sold 12 million copies worldwide because there are native French speakers all over the world. The same could be said about Spanish-speaking markets. Just because an artist did not sell in the US does not make them a flop. We need to stop thinking of a struggle to break through the US market as the ultimate sign of failure, because it is not. If you make it big in Germany or Japan, you're equally set for life. With that being said, I don't want to dedicate too much time to Nicole's solo albums in this video, but I will say Killer Love did not age well. Most songs don't hold up. This album did not chart in the US, but it peaked at number 4 in the UK. In comparison, Doll Domination peaked at number 4 in the US and the UK, and PCD peaked at number 5 in the US and number 7 in the UK. In 2014, Nicole released a second solo album. It was less successful and pretty much ended her solo recording career. Big Fat Lie was released under a new global deal with RCA/Sony to focus heavily on Europe markets following the failure of her previous album to chart in the US. Technically, Big Fat Lie was not officially released in the US. It's considered an import-only album. This isn't as relevant in today's streaming era, but it basically means they did not promote it in the US because they knew it would not sell. Similarly, I don't think this album aged well. Regardless of what you think of Nicole's music, there is no doubt that she was never able to have the same cultural impact as a solo artist. One could argue Nicole was more successful as a TV personality during the time between the Pussycat Dolls breakup and the reunion, but most of her major TV gigs had something to do with her singing, The X Factor for instance, or The Masked Singer. She was also a judge on Australia's Got Talent and The Sing Off. She would not have those TV gigs if she was not recognized as a singer in the mainstream. This is not surprising considering how Nicole's career first took off on television with the US version of Pop Stars way back in 2001. Also, fun fact, Nicole won Dancing with the Stars immediately after the Dolls split, which was always controversial because, let's be real, Nicole was a trained dancer at that point. Did we really think Kate Gosling would be fierce competition for a Pussycat Doll? Like, of course Nicole would win that show. What a random and funny side quest. Arguably, the most surprising career trajectory for Nicole was going from the Pussycat Dolls to winning a Tony. But since this happened in 2025, I will cover this at the end of the video because I want to keep the focus on the period between the Doll split and the first reunion attempt. By the way, if you're still watching at this point in the video, thank you so much. This channel would be nothing without you, and I really mean it. The single most important metric on YouTube is watch time, so I'm very thankful and appreciative of your time, and I will never take it for granted. I hope you've enjoyed the video so far, and I hope you like the remainder too. Chapter 12. The Dolls Go Solo. The girls all attempted solo careers to varying degrees of success, and although they never achieved the same cultural relevance, their solo projects are interesting to examine. To keep this segment contained, I will mostly take a look at everyone's most popular or best regarded work and also explore side quests, starting with Melody. Because everyone talked about Lioness Eyes in the comment section of part 1, I did go and listen to it in full. Let's start with the positive. I think Love Will Return is the best song on this album. As someone who likes playing vaults on the flute, I am biased towards a good 3-4 time signature. And the melody is nice, especially in the chorus. And to show I'm approaching this album in good faith, I even transcribed the chorus of this song so I can play it on the flute. Yeah, that's the take. It is what it is, girl. You can take a screen grab of my transcribed music sheet if you're interested. It will work with any instrument in the key of C, like the flute, which is concert pitch, by the way. Now, with that being said, I'm sorry to say the rest of the album did not hook me, and I'm not trying to rage bait you guys, I promise, I'm just not connecting with her work. She opens the album with her head voice, and we're not used to hearing it. It sounds a bit like Mickey Mouse, not gonna lie. The vibrato is out of control on most of the songs, the arrangements are pompous, it's trying too hard. That's just my opinion. I'm sorry, I just don't connect with this, but I'm glad I discovered Love Will Return, and hopefully finally, you accept my transcription as a peace offering. And also, to be fair, this is probably the best solo album to come out of any member of the Pussycat Dolls, including Nicole, so fair is fair. Melody also participated in the Masked Singer UK and won the 4th season of the Masked Singer Australia. Props to you, Melody. There's nothing wrong with being a contestant on the Masked Singer. Even our former First Lady was on. But it's hard not to see the contrast between Melody and Nicole's career paths. One is a contestant, the other one is on the panel. To be clear, they were not on the same franchise. It's not as if Nicole was on the panel while Melody was behind the mask, but still. Melody was also in some live productions, most notably The Bodyguard, and reviews for her performance were very positive. Many praised her vocals in that musical. You cannot say I'm not being fair to her. Let's talk about Carmit. After leaving the Pussycat Dolls, she worked on the Zodiac show as we discussed at the top of the video. The Zodiac show achieved some success and attracted high-profile collaborations. There's even a documentary about the show's production featuring Carmit and Adam Lambert titled The Zodiac Show Metamorphosis. So that's amazing. She also released club tracks as part of a duo called Lady Station. I've never heard of this before, sounds very underground to me. She's also worked as a freelance choreographer and worked as a charity ambassador. Her career seems most focused in the Los Angeles area. Up next is Jessica. Many viewers on my previous video were eager to point out how Jessica had 4 songs charting on the dance club chart in the US, and one particular user somehow seemed to think it's an achievement surpassing Nicole's career, but it isn't, let's be real. Jessica had 4 songs peaking at number 1 on the US dance club songs. Nicole had a UK number 1 single and 3 top 10 singles. She also had 1 song charting on the Billboard Hot 100. I'm sorry, but it's not the same level of success. Here's why. The dance club songs chart no longer exists, but it used to only measure what DJs played in nightclubs, not what consumers bought. So record labels frequently hired club promotion teams to push tracks to DJs. I'm not saying this is what happened here, but it's much easier to manipulate a track to number 1 on the dance club songs chart. It's definitely not as prestigious as conventional charts. Mainstream charts require millions of actual listeners and purchases to reach the top 100. So Nicole peaking at 39 on the Billboard Hot 100 is much more impressive than 4 number 1 songs on the dance club songs chart. I'm not trying to discredit Jessica, just setting the record straight because it seems to be a recurring talking point online. Now, with that being said, it's still a great achievement. Most artists never chart anywhere, so props to you, Jessica. In 2017, she released an album titled I Say Yes. She even has a Pitbull feature on this album. Not sure who this project is for, to be honest. It's just not very good. It's actually unlistenable. I'm sorry. Up next is Ashley. Her career has mostly been anchored in the UK, where she turned into a radio and TV personality. She was a showbiz presenter for a time for Hard Breakfast. In 2019, she also starred in a West End production of Waitress, but perhaps most famously, she was a contestant on 2 reality TV shows. In 2012, she was a runner-up on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. She was also part of the cast of Strictly Come Dancing in 2018. Ashley also released an album in 2014. Butterfly Effect is not a good album, but it's interesting for one precise reason. The chorus of the song titled Woman Up sounds very similar to Meghan Trainor's Woman Up released in 2016. That's because Meghan actually samples Ashley's song. You know the part that goes woman up, woman up? That part is taken from Ashley's song and it's credited as such. Who would have thought? Finally, let's talk about Kimberly. She too established her career in the UK after the Dolls. The UK is really showing up for the girls, eh? Kimberly was a judge on Got to Dance for 5 seasons. She also won Celebrity MasterChef UK in 2015, but immediately after the Dolls in 2011, she released an album as a pop duo called Her Majesty and the Wolves, and I'm sorry, but this is equally unlistenable. Melody, Carmi, Jessica, Ashley, and Kimberly all expressed how difficult the years after the Pussycat Dolls were, and many of them spoke in negative terms about their experience. Some were even willing to bash Nicole.
And even in the group, I wasn't allowed to talk.
That's really? It's amazing.
Yeah, we were told to be quiet. Only Nicole can talk. Only Nicole was allowed to talk.
Chapter 13. The PCD Brand. This will be a shorter chapter in comparison, but trust me, it's so interesting. After the Pussycat Dolls officially split in 2010, Robin Antin, who, if you remember, is the creator of the Pussycat Dolls and therefore in control of the brand, attempted multiple times to breathe new life into her vision. Some of these attempts were literally crazy. Most notoriously among them was the idea that she could launch a completely new lineup of the Pussycat Dolls, an idea initially endorsed by Interscope Records. And they really went over the top with the announcement of this so-called new generation of Pussycat Dolls. In early 2012, Antin revealed the new lineup in a high-profile and very expensive Super Bowl commercial for GoDaddy. Again, this played into the idea that the lineup for the Pussycat Dolls was not sacred, but it will get worse. Hold on tight. The new generation, announced in the Super Bowl ad, was made of familiar faces like Christina Sayers from Girlicious, Lauren Bennett from Paradiso Girls, another Robin Antin girl group project. The other members featured in the commercial were Erica Jenkins, Paula Van Oppen, and Vanessa Curry. But this lineup was unstable, and apparently multiple reshuffles happened. At one point, Natasha Slayton was added, as well as Natalie Mejia, who was formerly in Girlicious. But obviously, the fans were not buying that bullshit. For audiences, the Pussycat Dolls will forever be the original lineup: Nicole, Carmit, Melody, Jessica, Ashley, and Kimberly. That's when a recurring character in my videos emerged. Larry Rudolph, who's best known for being Britney Spears' longtime manager, stepped in. This is the manager she fired in 2007, as we've seen in this video. The year later, he was rehired by the legal apparatus surrounding Britney after she was put under a conservatorship. We'll talk about this in the next video, so subscribe for that. In February of 2013, Larry Rudolph thought it'd be best to rebrand these so-called new generations of Pussycat Dolls. This is how the pivot to GRL happened. After the new generation saga, you would think Robin Antin would drop the idea altogether, but no. In 2018, just a year before the real dolls actually attempted to reunite, she tried once more to revive a so-called new generation of Pussycat Dolls, this time placing Pia Mia as the lead vocalist alongside new dancers. Apparently, this lineup recorded music and even completed photo shoots. But there were several issues like visa problems for some of the international members, and perhaps most importantly, this time Robin had no backing from a label. So it all fell apart. But it's fine because just 1 year later, Robin would have her revenge. Chapter 14. Attempts at a comeback. At the time of making this video, any attempt to bring back the original Pussycat Dolls feels like trying to revive a dead corpse. I just don't see how it could happen following 2 failed attempts, but back in 2019, the prospect of a reunion felt exciting. The closest that the original lineup came to a true revival was in late 2019 when Robin Antin successfully brought back the original lineup with the notable exception of Melody. During that era, the Dolls released the song React. I've already talked about the music video for this song in this video. All I'll say is it's a banger of a video. The song is fine though, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it was exciting nonetheless. During this era, they announced a major world tour, but perhaps this reunion attempt is best remembered for their low-key iconic performance on the X Factor. Unfortunately, their long-anticipated return coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic, which severely delayed the tour, and while the whole world was in limbo, behind the scenes the Pussycat Dolls were fighting again. This time it ended up in a cancelled tour, a flop revival, and several lawsuits. In 2021, Robin sued Nicole, claiming she refused to perform unless she was given complete creative control. She also claimed Nicole wanted her stake in the PCD brand to be increased from 49% to 75%. In response, Nicole countersued, calling the allegations crazy and false. In her counter lawsuit, she also claimed that Robin was mismanaging funds and using her lawsuit to extort her. In classic PCD fashion, the announcement that the tour was cancelled blindsided members of the lineup. Apparently, Nicole unilaterally announced the cancellation on Instagram. All this legal drama was eventually resolved in a confidential settlement between Nicole and Robin, but it's unclear how that affects the brand moving forward. The following year, in 2026, the Pussycat Dolls were reformed as a trio featuring Nicole, Ashley, and Kimberly. Apparently, the door was not even open for Carmit, Jessica, or Melody to take part in this return. Carmit and Jessica both went public on social media. Apparently, they found out through the press about the 53-date global tour. Jessica later revealed that Nicole did not bother to call her until the exact day the tour was announced. Jessica refused to answer and vowed to never come back. It's unclear why Carmit was not invited, but many people believe Jessica was left out because of her support of MAGA, most implicitly of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We will cover this scandal and much more in the final chapter. Chapter 15: Drama Ever After. We cannot end this two-part series without covering the most recent drama surrounding the dolls. I think top of mind for most is the link between members of the Pussycat Dolls and the MAGA/MAHA movement. Like we just saw, Jessica claims her support for MAGA-aligned political views made her a liability. Apparently, she's basically blacklisted from any form of reunion because of it. It all started because of her anti-vax beliefs. She publicly supported Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s 2024 presidential campaign. When Kennedy became Secretary of Health, Jessica embraced the MAGA umbrella. And before you think I'm exaggerating, here's Jessica on a podcast talking about it.
And I was a liability. I aligned with Bobby Kennedy, which is aligning with MAGA. Do I love what Trump is doing? Absolutely not. I do not believe in war. Now, people are screaming at me, you're MAGA, you're MAGA. Yeah, I am. I triple down on it because I'm like, I'm so sick of people telling me who I should be.
Obviously, the irony with Jessica's blacklisting is that 2 years prior, Nicole faced backlash for commenting on Russell Brand's Instagram post. This forced Nicole to issue a public apology to quiet accusations that she herself was a MAGA sympathizer, claiming she did not realize the hat was a play on Trump's slogan. And before you come for me, I'm well aware that Nicole's comment on Russell Brand's post is not quite the same as Jessica being fully MAGA, but still, because of that, their appearance at Pride events divided the community. This also put a cloud above Nicole's head when she won her Tony Awards in 2025 for her performance in Sunset Boulevard. She definitely deserved that Tony, by the way. Also, did you guys see this behind-the-scene footage of Nicole on the set of When I Grow Up?
It's so crazy because, like, growing up, I thought I'd be doing that. I'd be on that side of the street and not on this side of the street. But one day I'll make it back home to the stage again. I miss it.
I think we can't have a final chapter about the ongoing drama without talking about the PCD Forever debacle. Not only were other members of the original lineup blindsided by the new reunion, so was the public. Throughout this video, we talked about how the lineup was never seen as sacred, despite what audiences thought of it. Well, the dolls talked about that tension up front on the Today Show in a now infamous clip. And thank God for Kimberly's quick wit on this one.
You guys were coming back as a trio, not as the original group. How did you arrive at that decision?
Well, I mean, listen, we are so, as women today.
I mean, it has been an ever-changing lineup, and you know, this is what it looks like now in 2026, and you never know what comes next. And I think ultimately we've got to protect our peace, and when something like the Pussycat Dolls has so much history, we have ruptured in the past, and right now we are repairing, and we're sort of on the same page with that.
The ongoing drama is too contemporary to put in perspective the way I do in the rest of the video, so I'm curious to know what you think about this whole mess in the comments below. It's also worth mentioning that the dolls suffered severe blue dot fever, forcing them to cancel all dates in North America. This is not really surprising, seeing how they never really headlined their own shows in North America throughout the years, as we've seen in this video and in part 1. They axed all 32 shows but decided to keep their performance at WeHo Pride in LA. The European dates were not cancelled. This is where the Pussycat Dolls story stands as of the making of this video. As always, if you made it this far into the video, I cannot thank you enough. If you like this video, you'll probably like this video or this one. And make sure to subscribe for other ongoing series in this format. Thank you so much for your support these past months. It means the world. See you soon.